There we go. We are in the Luxembourg Gardens, the lower portion of the Luxembourg Gardens, and I wanted here for episode number 33 to give you all a view of the gardens that you may not see as often. Certainly first-time visitors to Paris see different parts of the Luxembourg Gardens, but perhaps they don't venture all the way down here to the southern edge. So it's what I like to call the lower Luxembourg Gardens. It's sometimes referred to as Little Luxembourg. And we're starting off with a bang here with this beautiful, beautiful fountain. And I want to tell you about this fountain. It's called the Fountain of the Four Corners of the World. And it was designed by Napoleon III, who was one of our emperors in the 19th century. And Napoleon III chose Mr. Daviou. Daviou was the head architect of the parks and the squares of Paris. And so Daviou designed this in the early or the mid-1800s. And alongside Baron Haussmann, who redid Paris in the 19th century, Mr. Daviou, who did this fountain, also had a hand in designing the furniture of Paris that we know today, the lampposts and the benches and the gates and the balustrades. So why is this fountain here at the southern part of the Luxembourg Gardens? Hello, Annie McGregor, and I saw Phyllis Cartwright come up, super fan Phyllis Cartwright. You can see we've got some gorgeous fall colors here. I wanted to actually do the Luxembourg Gardens before the colors went away because we're at the tail end of the foliage season here. So let's get back to the fountain of the four corners of the world, the four parts of the world. For a long time, the world was seen as having four parts. And those four parts are represented by these ladies up top here, supporting the globe, supporting the world, as it were. And so the four corners of the world back in the day were Asia, Africa, the Americas, and France. And all those four ladies are represented at the top, at the base of these beautiful horses. You got these little turtles that are firing water up over the heads of the horses up toward the ladies, and you can see in the distance there the palace of the Luxembourg Gardens, and we'll talk about that palace a little closer to that today. And so back to the fountain here. One of the great Parisian sculptors, Mr. Carpeau, designed these ladies up here, and in the front we have Africa, and then on the side we have the Americas. And I'm actually going to stand up here on the side of the fountain, always risking my personal safety for the good of these videos. I don't know if you can make it out, but at the foot of this lady towards the left represents Africa. She is chained at her ankle. She has these sort of restraints, and the chain is broken, but the piece of the chain is going under the foot of the lady on the right, who represents the Americas. So there's a bit of a slavery and emancipation bit of symbolism there. So what does that mean if that lady representing Africa, if her chains have been broken, so she is free, but you have the lady representing America still standing with her right foot on top of the chain? I don't know if you can make that out, but trust me, it's there. There's definitely some symbolism going on there. I'm getting a nice little spritz here, a nice little spray on this warm sunny day. So Mr. Carpeau, who also designed part of a beautiful statue in front of the Opera House, the Opera Garnier, he was a big fan of the Renaissance, and so he's kind of evoking Michelangelo and Da Vinci and Raphael in his work here. It's really quite stunning, and with the backdrop of the autumn colors, you can't really beat it. There's a quote of Mr. Carpeau, the sculptor here, that I really love. He once said, "When an artist feels pale and cold, he runs to Michelangelo in order to warm himself, as with the rays of the sun." We've got some rays of sun today. Let me jump down off of this here. Okay, made it. There we go, the fountain of the four corners of the world. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Welcome everybody. If you're just joining me, we're in the 6th arrondissement for our 33rd episode of these live stream tours of Paris. I'm coming at you here every single Saturday, most Saturdays, for a free walk in real time, a vicarious stroll through the city that we all love so much. My name's Frye. I'm a full-time tour guide and blogger and photographer here, American in Paris. And I decided for those who couldn't be in Paris, I'd start bringing Paris to them, and so that's what we're doing here. Let's meditate on this view here. So this area here to the south of the Luxembourg Gardens is often referred to as Little Luxembourg. And all the way further down towards the palace used to be the border of the park, but then Napoleon III, the emperor, decided to extend the gardens further this way, in this long, lovely stretch of grass. And he ignored the protesters who didn't appreciate that this new extension of the park would be messing up the traffic, the circulation down here to the south. So he ignored those protests and decided to extend it. Now, if you look on a map, this strip that we call Little Luxembourg actually runs almost exactly north and south, and that's because it intentionally runs along what used to be the prime meridian of the world. You know, before we had the Greenwich prime meridian, which we base time zones on today, there was another one running through Paris for a long, long time. And in fact, cartographers, when they would make maps back in the day, they had to choose which prime meridian they wanted to base their maps on. So that's the palace of the Luxembourg Gardens all the way at the end there. We got some beautiful blue sky here. And then what also runs along the north-south axis and the former prime meridian of Paris, if I am nice and slow here, if you can make it out behind the fountain where we just were, that's the Paris Observatory, that white dome all the way in the distance. And that observatory used, of course, to observe the night sky and for astronomy studies and whatnot. It made sense that that would run along the meridian, the exact north-south axis of the city and of the world for a long time. What are these statues here that we were admiring? There are 4 statues done by 4 different sculptors, and they represent the different moments of the day. So this one is dawn, it represents the start of the day, dawn. And then further down we have midday, and then we have twilight down there, and then it's finished by night, a statue of night. There's such a great family atmosphere here today. As always in the Luxembourg Gardens, but particularly on a Saturday, you have a lot of kids kicking soccer balls around. And I want to show you these lampposts. Of course, as you would imagine, the lampposts are stunning and aesthetic, and there was some thought put into them. So if you can make that out, let's find a composition right about there. I will point out, have you noticed the patches of dirt here where there was meant to be grass? If you're in a Paris park and they're ever keeping you off the grass and you say, oh man, how come I can't use the grass? Well, this is why. Because there are certain areas they're going to let the kids run around and people picnic and blah, 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 you know, use it. But then it gets beat up. So that's why certain parts of the Luxembourg Gardens are definitely off limits. So we could walk further this way, just in a straight line, and we'd get into the proper section of the Luxembourg Gardens. But we got to make a detour because, you know, we always like to get off the beaten track here, and I got to show you some stunning architecture that I don't want you to miss here. I'm going to keep remembering during this video to look back, because that's where the sun's coming through, and we're going to get some lovely light like this. D. Hubert says that I pronounce the word dawn like a New Yorker. Well, after 10 years, I guess I adopted a bit of the accent there. If my wife Charlotte's still listening with my daughters Taya and Tess, hello girls, thank you. Thanks for tuning in and watching Daddy do his thing. Okay, so we're gonna pop out to the west here. Check out what's going on here. Wow. Just stunning. Look at that unexpected hunk of brick. So what is going on here? It certainly piqued my interest the first time I saw it. This is part of the Sorbonne, actually, the very famous university here on the left bank. And it is the a university of art and art history and archaeology, or architecture, I think. Just look at these beautiful carvings. Yeah, art and archaeology, sorry. So look at these just stunning reliefs. Reliefs that are all in brick, essentially. And it's not a French-looking building at all. Built starting in 1925. Let's get a little bit closer here. So we have symbolism and figures that seem Greco-Roman at times. Other times, I dare say, even sort of Egyptian or Mesopotamian. quite a mix. I get the feeling that in 1925, the architect wasn't going for, you know, just one style, sort of a blend of things. So this just goes the whole block. Let me speed up a little bit here, and I'll show you the front entrance. So this is part of the Sorbonne, University of Art and Archaeology. And it's definitely worth a quick detour from the Luxembourg Gardens. It's going to be a little backlit here, but let me... Look at this thing. What a lovely unexpected view here. Just steps from the Luxembourg Gardens. Good stuff. 200 of you joining me live. I'm so excited about that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you making this part of your Saturday each and every week. We've got a fantastic community. And speaking of the community, I've got an announcement to make. Let me go back into the proper park section here. Oh, actually, no. Lest I forget, I gotta show you another piece of architecture here. Let's not get off track. Another university building here. This is for pharmaceutical studies. I heard a statistic once that France is the most medicated country in the world. There certainly are pharmacies everywhere around here. And so what I'd like to do is pop my apparatus through the gate, which we sometimes do. There we go. And I can show you. This is the University Pharmaceutical Studies. Aw, thanks Mimi Costello, who says these videos are the best part of her weekend. The university students of Paris, they're not roughing it, we'll put it that way. So they're all out here during the week in between classes and whatnot. Stunning, stunning stuff. I get the feeling it pays. Let me sneak back through the gate here. Look at those colors on the trees. What a fantastic day here for this. Yeah, where was I? I think being a pharmacist, certainly owning a pharmacy in France, is quite profitable. We have a friend whose parents own a pharmacy or two, and they're doing pretty well for themselves, and it's just something that is so ingrained in French culture. They go to the pharmacy every week for something or other. So, it's a very windy day, so you're probably going to see my phone getting blown around a little bit here. Sorry about that. Very windy day. Just saw a comment asking if universities are state paid. Are they free, or do you pay? It depends, but a lot of these here that I'm showing you are definitely paid for. So it's, that whole quality of life in France, it really pays to be able to go to school almost for free. I know my wife did. My wife, who's French, when Charlotte heard about my student loans, my American college loans, she was quite shocked. I was like, well, that's how we do it in America, honey. We like to pay through the teeth for the better part of our lives to get educated. It's not the case here. Beautiful columns here. So we're back in the Little Luxembourg. We're also here walking the path that Ernest Hemingway would have enjoyed quite often. It's well documented in his memoirs, A Movable Feast, that he would traverse here when he was either leaving or going toward the cafe behind me at the bottom of this park called the La Closerie des Lilas. That was his favorite cafe in this area. He wrote several works there, including The Sun Also Rises. And in that story, The Sun Also Rises, in fact, he set some of the scenes of the story in that very cafe. So that's at our backs. And Hemingway would have used this area quite often, coming up through the park and whatnot. Here's the last of those statues that represent the times of day. Again, sorry for the wind, everybody. It's just that's how it's gonna be today. Oof. Yeah. This represents nighttime. So perhaps we're looking at Apollo, the sun god, who's being coerced or maybe a bit seduced by the goddess of night, an allegory of night. And she's trying to convince him rather to go to bed and finish the day. back toward where we started. Ooh, good stuff. What a beautiful, beautiful fall day. Hope you're enjoying those colors wherever you are. Hey, I see Ellen Frye. My mom's in the house. Fantastic. And we're going to get into the proper portion of the Luxembourg Gardens, so to speak. Go. Oh, look at those perspectives. Just fantastic. So yeah, I teased you with a bit of an announcement, and then I pulled it away from you all. So let me tell you, we are going to start a French Fry book club for those of you who enjoy reading about Paris and about France. And it's going to be run and moderated by one of our frites, one of the members of our private community that we have, our Patreon community. It's Christina Consolet. So the lovely Christina Consolet said, hey Corey, would you mind if we started a book club, and I'd be happy to moderate it and to arrange it. So that's what we're going to do, folks. We're going to start, for my Patreon subscribers, over in our private sharing page on Facebook that we like to see each other at, we are going to start a book club. And Christina Consolet is going to be your contact for that. She's going to, later today, actually post 3 options for Paris or France-related books, novels, and you are all going to vote, and you'll choose one. And you'll spend several weeks all reading them at your leisure, and then you will meet up probably via Skype or some sort of way that you can talk to Christina. You can all get together and discuss this Paris-related book that you've all read. So thank you, Christina Consolet, if you're out there. The book club is going to begin starting today, and you can all vote on which story you'd like to get started with. I'm excited about that. Big thanks to Christina. So here we've entered the southern portion of the sort of the main Luxembourg Gardens. And we can see the palace down there. You know, some say that this is the most Parisian of all the parks. And it maybe is, but ironically it was built for an Italian lady. You may, if you've come to Paris before, you may know already that this was Marie de Medici, who in the early 1600s purchased this plot of land from the Duke of Luxembourg, which is where the name comes from. The Duke of Luxembourg gave over his property, and the Queen, Marie de Medici, bought up a bunch of other parcels and some houses and tore some stuff down and built that beautiful palace inspired by her Florentine home, the Palazzo Pitti. And so very Italian-inspired gardens. She brought in all the best gardeners and flower and tree experts and horticultural experts. She brought them all the best of the kingdom. She brought them here and created the Luxembourg Gardens. Napoleon Bonaparte redid these gardens eventually and put the Senate in that building, the French Senate, where it still resides. Let me show you the view here looking back at the gate, because I don't want us to miss that. That'd be a heck of a residence, huh? With the Luxembourg Gardens as your front yard. Laura Long's asking me how they hedge those trees. I've seen they have it's sort of like a long arm, an extended, almost robotic armature with a blade on it. And then they've got a little machine with wheels that runs along the side, and that armature trims them all. So we could walk straight toward the center of the park, but I think what I want to do today is show you a part of the park that people see less often. So we're going to say goodbye to this beautiful stretch and the Palace of Marie de Medici. I'm going to head this way. It's exposed for the sky there. Ugh. Complementary colors. I just want to sing about the color palette we're enjoying today. As usual, I want to stop for every composition and every view, but we do have to follow our itinerary here and make a little bit of progress. I can see a lot of comments of wow, beautiful, fantastic colors, so I'm glad you're all enjoying that. All right, so we're heading west. Now let me show you this beauty here. Full of sculptures this park is. We've got a very regal looking lion. Let me get nice and close. Technically I'm standing on the grass right now that I don't think I'm supposed to be on, but this beautiful lion is cool enough to look at, and there's sadly a dead ostrich. We can mourn the death of this fictional ostrich. He's seen better days. But if you look right here, interesting that the artist is a gentleman named Cain, C-A-I-N. And Cain also did part of the Louvre, something called the Porte des Lions, the door of the lions. So if you recognize this lion at all, it's because that some of the lions of the Louvre Palace, the Louvre Museum, done by the same artist. Ooh, I think you're going to enjoy these views here. This is one of my favorite spots. If you can make out the colors there. Now, we're not the only ones who have adored these views. A lot of artists would come through here. John Singer Sargent painted a beautiful picture. You can Google this. It's called the Luxembourg Gardens at Twilight. And he painted here. Vincent van Gogh painted here. Whistler painted here in the Luxembourg Gardens. Several of the Impressionists, of course, were fans of this area. William Faulkner, the great American poet, lived along the park. Isadora Duncan, who invented modern dance, she would come here at 5 a.m. when they opened the park, and she would work out and do dance exercises. As I said, Hemingway would come here often. He wrote in A Movable Feast in his memoirs that when he was hungry, he wanted to avoid the beautiful smells, the delicious smells coming from the bakeries and the restaurants. So he would always walk through the Luxembourg Gardens because it was the one place where he could avoid those smells of things, stuff that he couldn't eat or he couldn't afford, perhaps. Oh, I'm walking backwards and bumping into people. Look at that. Hemingway would come through here because he would go to the Luxembourg Museum and he would enjoy looking at the Cézanne paintings that were hanging on the wall there. And he believed that Impressionist paintings always looked more clear and more crisp on an empty stomach. And I don't know if you all agree with that. Personally, I hate doing anything on an empty stomach, but Hemingway was convinced that if he didn't eat on his way up to the Cézanne paintings, he would appreciate them more. Yeah, Gidget, who says it's a beautiful day. It really is stunning. And you get these glimpses of light coming through. Look at the quality of what's happening there. My goodness. Gertrude Stein lived nearby, famously. The American writer and critic, art collector. Stein was actually the one who convinced Hemingway he should go see the Cézanne paintings at the Luxembourg Museum. And so she would walk through this park pretty much every day. And Gertrude Stein, an American in Paris, had some lovely quotes. I want to share a couple of them. I'm sort of paraphrasing here. She said, for example, "America is my country and Paris is my hometown." And I know a lot of you think and feel the same way. America is my country, but Paris is my hometown. This is not Gertrude Stein that we're looking at. This is Mr. Charles Baudelaire. Baudelaire was a 19th century poet, and his most famous work was sort of a collection of lyric poetry that was called Les Fleurs du Mal, the flowers of evil. Actually written, his famous masterwork, Les Fleurs du Mal, written on the Ile Saint-Louis in an apartment up there. So for those of you who have ever rented an apartment or have strolled along Ile Saint-Louis in the center of town, you have been walking with the ghost of Baudelaire. Baudelaire, by the way, other poets later on, really brilliant guys like Rimbaud and Proust, they always looked up to this guy as a poetry god. They said really nobody, even the best poets around, agreed that Mr. Baudelaire was the best and outshined them all. There's another quote I want to share with you as we walk through the orchard portion of the Luxembourg Gardens, because they've got hundreds of varieties and species of apples and pears here. So that's what's going on here. This is really the very, very local part of the Luxembourg Gardens. I'd say this is the least touristy part of this park that you can find. Plenty of joggers, especially in the morning. You almost got to watch out. You can get run over here by joggers. It's almost, you know, the local residents are using this area as their own backyard. So yeah, that quote from Gertrude Stein, who lived nearby and would often walk these paths, this is one that I really want to meditate on. She said, "It's not what France gave you, but what it did not take from you that was important." Think about that. It's not what France gives you, it's what it doesn't take away from you. I love that quote. I just want to carry that quote around with me in my back pocket. I've got a few more things I want to show you here. Look at this flower bed. We've got another bust, another great visual. A gentleman called Sainte-Beuve. Sainte-Beuve was a French literary critic. But let me back up enough. Just fantastic. Kelly Wells is asking me to repeat the quote. The Stein quote goes something like this: "It's not what France gives you, it's what it does not take from you." As if we're all, this is how I'm interpreting it, we're all special and beautiful and inspired, but that can be taken away from us depending on the lives that we lead or the people we're surrounded by. And so her point was, I guess, France doesn't take that away from you. So you can perhaps be more of yourself. You can be more human, more inspired. I mean, that's my speculation. Cindy Grief says, "My favorite place on earth." There's another flower bed, another sculpture, all these wide patches of grass that you're not allowed to stand on or sit on. Technically, I guess I'm standing on one right now, which is bad, but it's because I want to give us a zoomed out view of this right there. I shared this photo on Facebook earlier. Do you remember where we started out with the fountain today? I said it was by the head architect of the Paris parks and squares called Daviou, Mr. Daviou. This is called the Daviou Pavilion because he built this beauty. He built some other ones as well in the Bois de Boulogne. He built a real nice one in the Butte Chaumont that you can see as well. And I want to walk around here. What's it used for today? It started out as a cafe and a restaurant, but today it's actually used for the horticulture school of Luxembourg Gardens. Nobody lives here, Annie. Horticulture school. It's also used by the beekeeping school that we'll see nearby in a second. Let me go ahead and give you the once around here. A friend of mine here in Paris called David Fenwick pointed out that up here, if you can see real close up there, there's actually a bird motif It's that sort of terracotta section there where there are little beaks and little eyeballs. Actually, all those pointy sections. So what a beautiful little piece of architecture tucked away in the back here. You can have weddings here, wedding receptions. There are exhibits sometimes inside of this place, and then sometimes it's just used essentially as a classroom or a lecture hall for horticulture groups and the beekeeping groups, the folks who are learning how to keep bees. And then just a couple more things before I wrap up. Hi Stephanie, I see your comment. Great. Stephanie left just 2 weeks ago and she's already pining for Paris again, so hopefully that's one use of these videos for those who are a little homesick in a way, even though this may not be your home. Yes, Juliet Sykes reminds me that they do sell honey at that pavilion. In fact, it just happened last weekend, I think the 22nd of September. So you can buy the honey here. And let me show you what's going on here. This is a beekeeping school, so you can, if you can make it out, they've got all those beautiful antique wooden little bee houses and beehives in there. And in the center of the frame, they also installed a little fountain, so the bees have their own personal fountain to get the water that they need. This was installed in the mid-1800s, and there are close to 1 million bees in this community here. Now, you know, the bees across the world are not doing so hot. Entire colonies and species of bees are getting wiped out, but Parisian bees happen to be some of the healthiest. Maybe because there's a no pesticide rule in Paris. Maybe it's because I don't know, the conditions are just better here. And so these bees in particular will go, you know, they've got pretty much everything they need, nectar-wise, pollen-wise rather. They can go around in the trees and the flower beds and even the orchards that we saw with the pears and the apples. So that's a school, and it's run by a gentleman who almost by mistake had to pop a beehive on top of the opera house, the Opéra Garnier, and turns out the bees really thrived and made delicious honey. And so this gentleman decided to, he actually applied, he became the man who's running that school now. And there are beehives on top of all the great buildings of Paris, not all of them, but Notre Dame and the Opera House. And a couple more things before we wrap up. There are little kiosks where you can grab ice cream and crepes and drinks and chips and things. But this one in particular, you know, each one's a little bit different. I love what's going on here with the tables. I don't want to bother these folks too much, but look what's going on here with, there we go, the tables. It's adorable, isn't it? Jennifer Warren says, everything's better in Paris, even the bees. This place actually sells really good coffee. And then here we've got the pétanque gentlemen. This is fantastic. The pétanque gentlemen doing their thing. They come here pretty much every day, but on Saturdays it's particularly busy. Pretty fierce competition going on here. And look what they did. Do you see the coat racks there? I don't want to bother these gentlemen too much, but look at the coat racks. Isn't that fantastic? And then let me show you this little kiosk over here. This kiosk actually is closed, but when they open it up, you can see it's drawers with all the balls. Do you see what's going on there? Bonjour. Je vous filme pas, je filme juste les tiroirs parce que je trouve ça très sympa, très intéressant. Voilà.
Amen. Il a voté. Il a mis ses boules.
Look at this too. That's the trophy. Merci, messieurs. Bonne journée à vous. Pretty adorable, right? Pétanque is serious business here. coat racks, drawers for your balls. They have competitions here and tournaments and things. It really is charming. All right, here we go. My friend I mentioned earlier, Dave Fenwick, who spends a lot of time in Paris, he said he actually comes there, or comes here rather, to the pétanque very often. He says they're very, very nice, very warm and welcoming. So I think you could show up and just ask to play. You got to really know your stuff though, because all eyes are on you. We're going to finish up with a couple more details. I'll show you what's going on there.
I was looking at the weather. Oh, I know.
Hey, Hassan Manning, I see your name coming up. How's it going, man? Hope you and Deshaun are doing well over there. We're going to finish with the detail for the Americans. And some of you may know what that's going to be, but first, don't miss, if you're in this area, a hidden little Chopin. Chopin, I've said this before, I've talked about this, I talk about it on my walking tours when I have clients here. Fled Warsaw during civil unrest and spent most of his adult life in Paris, died in Paris, buried at Père Lachaise Cemetery, and really thrived here as a composer. So just tucked away here in these shrubs, quite well concealed, is Chopin. Just another reminder that this park is pretty fantastic. It's got just about everything you'd need. Same flower bed, but different view. There. Carolyn says, I love how sharp they dress. Yeah, you know, I gotta say French culture in general, Parisian culture, just feels like they've kicked everything up a notch or two. In a lot of ways, you know, they just make a little bit more effort at various things. That's why I started wearing scarves when I moved here. Look at that light. Oof. All these different moments of color and light. Contrast. Okay, so we're going to finish with this one. Either you know this, or you don't. And it'll be perhaps a bit of a surprise to you. Paris has a handful of replicas of the Statue of Liberty. That, of course, was a gift from the French to the US, to New York City, to mark the 100-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the sculptor was a Frenchman named Bartholdi. And Bartholdi couldn't just create the big one from scratch right away. He had to make smaller versions. And so here we've got a replica of one of his models that he used. And there are 4 or 5 of these in the city of Paris, if you know where to look. Scale model of his original design. Statue of Liberty is actually a nickname. The original name for it, I'll show you the plaque here. It was meant to be called Liberty Enlightening the World. Liberty Illuminating the World. But it got nicknamed Statue of Liberty and that stuck. If you notice, let me get a little bit closer. Are we going to be able to make this out? There are 7 points on her crown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I know it's hard to make that out. And that actually represents the 7 continents of the world. We started with a fountain that represented the 4 corners of the world, and now the 7 points of her crown represent the 7 continents. So I find that quite interesting. Many French women and men and children here, many Parisians actually chipped in to have the proper one built and gifted to the US. So that's pretty great. And right next to it, this is something a lot of people overlook. People will find the Statue of Liberty, but they don't realize that this little plaque here, I'm going to read it for you. It's in French and English. There's a tree in front of me that I'll show you in a minute. So it says, this American oak is dedicated to the memory of the victims of September 11th in the United States. Oh. Of course, sorry about that equipment failure. So an oak was planted in honor of those victims of September 11th, and I'll show you that oak. It was planted in 2002. It's right here. It's not very big. But it will be one day. And I think that's fantastic. Dedicated to the victims. Beautiful. Okay, is my equipment going to hold out? Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to finish things up. I'm going, if you can make it out there in the distance, is the Pantheon. All the way there in the distance. And it's just a really great time of year to be in the park. I'm so glad I was able to share this with you all. Now, remember the book club for my Patreon subscribers. If you don't know what Patreon is and you want to become a supporting member of this project and get rewards in return, go ahead and click the link on the description of this replay. This video is going to go up as a replay, so you can go back and watch it. And I put a bunch of links there. Hello. I put a bunch of links there that you can click on my Facebook. You can book tours with me, Instagram, and all of that jazz. So thanks, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the Luxembourg Gardens. Let me show you one last view. Oh my goodness, the colors. I gotta say, the sun really cooperated with us today, didn't it? Hope you appreciated this. Share this with your friends. Let people know about it. And I will catch you on the next one. Remember, if you can't come to Paris, I'm going to keep bringing it to you week after week for free, live in real time, vicariously. And we're just getting started, folks. Enjoy your Saturday. Thanks for spending it with me here in Paris, and I will catch you for the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.